Let's install the Xata GitHub app for instant database clones for every pull request. So the idea here generally is that we have a Xata project with a main branch. We also have a GitHub repo that's integrated to that main branch using a database connection string, as you can see right here. So what we want to do is every time I make a major change to this app, I'm going to create a feature branch and then turn that into a pull request. From that pull request, I will want to do all sorts of things. Some of that might be CI/CD or like a GitHub Actions workflow to test a bunch of things. Some of it might be that particular branch needs to go to an agent itself to test a bunch of other things. So we want a lot of options with that. So to make this work, we jump back into our Xata console, into our project. In the project settings here, we're going to scroll on down into the GitHub repository, install the app itself, and then I'll go ahead and add it to all repositories on my GitHub account. Or you can, of course, select the ones you want to use. You can make it very narrow if you'd like. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and do all. And then I'm going to go ahead and install this right into my Xata account. Once I install it, I need to connect my GitHub repo with my Xata project. So it's not connected just yet. The app is installed, but I need to scroll on down to connect them together by selecting the repo I want this Xata project with. So as soon as I save this settings, it is now ready to get a brand new branch for every new PR. So if we go back into our branches inside of Xata, and if we take a look at our branches inside of GitHub, we can see that they both only have a main branch. So we want to change this. And the way I'm going to change this is mostly automated by jumping back in. I created this little script that creates a new feature branch for me. And that feature branch then gets pushed into GitHub, which I can go back in there and refresh. So it's not a pull request just yet. It's just a feature branch. So I need to go into that branch, and then I'm going to go ahead and open a new pull request. Now, as soon as I open this up, I can add a bunch of title and description about it, which you probably should. I'm going to just go ahead and create the pull request right now so we can see something pretty magical. And there is the branch right there. And of course, if I go back into Xata, I can see that branch right there as well. Now, the actual GitHub, pull request itself has a lifecycle. So you open it up. When you open it up, it will create that branch. When you close it, it will close the branch as well. So inside of Xata, that branch is now gone. If I open it back up, the pull request itself, it will create another branch for us right inside of Xata. Now, the key part of both of these things is the names of the branches are identical. So we've got a feature branch right here, and that same exact branch is named the same thing inside of GitHub. That is on purpose. This makes it a lot easier to reference everything that you might need to, whether it's in GitHub Actions or with an agent altogether. So this is a very powerful way to actually get those instant branches, and it happens based off of main. So if this main branch was deployed into production, this branch right here, this database copy or clone, is ready for you to do all database stuff that you would need to in a production-like setting. So for example, if you have an application that has access rules that might get a little complicated, they might have a bunch of different things that are stored in the database for various access. This is something that's a little bit hard to test in code because the production data lives in the production database. So what we can do with this branching is we can actually test this with our own GitHub action. So I actually do have this set up in a GitHub action. As you can see right here, I've done a number of tests about it on this exact same thing. So I want to show you how that part is done as well. So at this point, though, I will say the branch inside of Xata, this branch right here is already ready to be used. You don't need to go any further with what I'm about to show you. You can already use these branches. You get a custom connection string that you can share all over the place. You can use the Xata API to actually connect with this as well. But overall, what I want to show you is somewhat of a practical example that you might have inside of GitHub itself with a GitHub Actions workflow that's also associated to that same PR flow that we just looked at. So the way this is done then is what we want to do is we want to come into our organization settings and we want to get an API key. So these API keys will allow for us to connect to this particular org. You can have multiple. That connection will allow for you to connect to any given project, which we'll look at both things in just a moment. So I already have a few examples in here, as you can see, but I'm going to call this my GH and demo flow, something like that. I'm going to give the expiration to tomorrow, and I'm going to go ahead and create this API key. So as soon as I do something like this, I actually want to bring this into my local project just so I have reference to it. I could bring it directly into GitHub as well, but I'm going to put it into my local project where I have a .env file to keep track of the different environment variables I will need to use. As you can see here, I also need my org ID and project ID for this particular flow, but that's actually really simple to get. If I jump into my projects here and select my project, I can actually see up here in this URL, it actually has that data for me. So we've got organizations. The one right next to that is going to be your org ID. We've got projects and the project key right there. And there we go. So I now have the elements that I need to check this into GitHub itself using the GitHub secrets. So back into my GitHub workflow, I want to actually go into settings here. I'm going to go into my secrets and variables. Under GitHub Actions, I'm going to go ahead and create some repository secrets that are going to be each one of these things. So I'll go ahead and bring in the Xata API key here. We're going to bring that one in like that. And then we're going to go ahead and bring in the org ID in the same way. And we want to do that as well. And then finally, we'll go ahead and bring in the project ID here. And just like that. Now, I will say these three elements are definitely needed if you want to create branches on your own. So if you wanted to have a GitHub Action workflow that wasn't automatically creating branches, you could absolutely do that. Now, the reason I have it as this is because now I can actually work based off of the PR itself and create branches that way and then do something pretty cool with them. So the way I'm going to show you this is actually by doing more pull requests. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this first one here, and then we can actually close this out. Just like that. That should actually, bring out that old feature branch. So now I'm going to go ahead and create a new pull request by creating a new feature branch by just using that same script I had before, which is going to create the next demo feature, and it's going to push it into GitHub, which we see here. So what we've got is a compare and pull request thing that I can do now. I don't always have to go directly to the branch to create it. I could just do it this way. As you may already be aware of, I'm going to go ahead and start this process. So at this point, what we should see is a branch being created and then a GitHub Actions workflow waiting to start. Now, the reason this one waits to start is to make sure that all those secrets are in there. Then we also give a little bit of a delay for this one running to make sure the branch is up and ready. And then it runs through all of the things it needs to run through, which is pretty powerful. Now, if I go back into the pull requests themselves, this shouldn't actually take that long, but once it is finished, it's going to show me a report. I'll let it finish and I'll come right back. That report was completed based off of this branch, and we can see we've got a few users in here, we've got a few articles, and we have some permission here. Now, this is actually reflected in this example, project itself. So if I actually jump into that project on my local host, I can actually come in here and I can see the different access that's going through. So those same numbers that are right here are also right in here, which is pretty interesting. So what I want to do is I want to change those numbers in here. So the way I'm going to do that is by going back into my local project, and then I'll just go ahead and add a view argument in here. We can see just a few of these. I can actually iterate on them and it changes those numbers. So we made a meaningful change to our production database. In this case, it's not fully a production database, but it's emulating what would be one. Now, again, if we look into our local project, this database connection string goes to the Xata main branch. That's kind of the point. I'm not touching the code other than doing yet another branch itself. So I'm going to go ahead and push yet another one in there. In fact, I can push as many as I want as far as branches are concerned. I can have a lot of those feature branches in there, and all of those would be ready, assuming that I create pull requests for all of them. All of them would have instant clones of the database as well. Whatever the main branch is at that time, that's what's going to be the branch inside of GitHub also. which is pretty cool. But I'm going to go ahead and do, 003 here, go ahead and create that pull request. Once again, it's going to do the same process. It's going to give me an instant database branch right there. Then it's going to go ahead and run through the GitHub Actions workflow, which I'll pause once again. That workflow finished, and we now see that this new feature branch 003 has additional data in here, and more importantly, it reflects what's actually in the database itself, because we got that production-like data, except it's isolated from production altogether. This is incredible. So there's a lot more that you can do than this simple example, but the point is that we have this instant ability to do all sorts of things. And of course, if I were to come back and do these other feature branches and also do pull requests in them, all of them will have the exact same process in there as well. And you can test it out on your own. It's a really powerful way to build your projects. But the point here all along is the fact that you get this instant branching. If you didn't have the ability to use this instant branching, it might take a while to even get to the point to do tests on top of a copy of that database. This happens immediately, and you can do it as many times as you need to make sure that everything's running. And of course, it will scale down to 0, which means that if these branches do stay up, if you have those pull requests up for weeks or years, you could, keep them up because they won't be in use, so they'll scale to 0, which means your bills won't go crazy. Now, the point of all of this is to get this stuff going and make sure that it's working inside of your projects. So I highly encourage you to check out the Xata GitHub app right now, today. Thank you so much.